Welcome to episode 1, the very first episode of the Reptile Show Reporter podcast. In this episode, part 1 is about an introduction, and part 2 is about the history of how we got here. Cue the music! I am Sean McNeely, otherwise known as McZoo. My co-host Bill Strand, the headmaster of the Chameleon Academy and long-term podcaster, and I have weekly live shows where we focus on my exotic pet adventures. My wife and kids and I attend reptile shows or similar venues such as zoos, reptile rooms, petting zoos, and much more. To be clear, the term reptile show includes more than just reptiles, such as snakes, lizards, and turtles. These shows also include amphibians, mammals, arachnids, and other things we call bugs. To add more complexity, you'll find things that house these creatures, feed them, and keep them entertained. You'll also find many unrelated things, such as jewelry and other flea market type stuffs. These podcasts are an in-depth look at individuals, companies, and organizations that I meet along the way. I pick the people you adventurers might find more interesting or that we don't have enough time to comprehensively interview on the weekly show. Since the weekly show is live, sometimes both Bill and I forget to ask important questions, or the guests leave out details about themselves or their contributions. I've also created this podcast as a different venue to learn more about people potentially asking difficult questions. If mistakes are made on the live show, the recording is there. However, in these podcasts, nothing said is public until I've edited and released the podcast. I hope to have one released each month, but ideally every other week. The Reptile Show Reporter Outreach is my way of sharing my enjoyment of all things reptiles, amphibians, mammals, plants, and bugs, and all the related things. Please feel free to connect with me on any of my channels. However, I find myself most frequently checking the Reptile Show Reporter email, as well as my Zoo Exotic email, which is Sean@thereptileshowreporter.com and Sean@McZooExotics.com. Those I check daily. Most days, I check Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you'd like to learn more about this journey with me and my family, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, join the Facebook group Reptile Show Reporter, and follow me on Instagram, Reptile Show Reporter with no spaces. My family, Bill Strand, and I have really enjoyed these outreaches and hope you will too. As long as we have one loyal follower on any channel, we'll continue to share our adventures. So, if you got the information you wanted, you can stop now. However, in the next section, I will give you the backstory to how this all got started. Part 2, the backstory. It's full of twists and turns and becomes something much different than it was originally intended. Back in May of 2022, I was an admin for the Reptile Enthusiast Facebook group, along with Bill Strand and Alicia Vichel. We had several new moderators and were looking to get them exposure, so Bill Strand thought, why not create a live show where each of them could introduce themselves and answer questions? It was just supposed to be a single show. However, due to the varying schedules and availability of the moderators, we decided to make it a weekly situation. Alicia and I were on the very first show together, and I took to asking questions after I introduced myself. I was available for the next few shows, so Bill ran the board and I asked the questions. Well, Bill could tell that I really enjoyed these live shows, and together we decided to continue them once we finished with the admin team intros. We decided to go broader than chameleons as both of us kept several other species. Surprisingly, Exotic Pet Adventures in all the outlets we checked was unused, and the URL was available, so we decided to call it that. It was my job to get the guests, and his job to operate the software and make the thumbnail. So on June 16th, 2022, Exotic Pet Adventures launched and had its first live show streamed on Facebook and YouTube, featuring Eric Haycraft, and things continued this way for several weeks until the first week of August. Unfortunately, I ended up in the hospital after having a stroke. I went through several weeks of physical rehab, and my speech therapist felt that continuing the show would be good for my ability to speak and for me cognitively. So, on August 18th, less than 3 weeks from my stroke onset, of August 2nd, 2022, We were back to the show, and the first show was about my stroke, my recovery, and my plans moving forward. We soon continued the weekly every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern show. Things were going well, but Bill had a planned trip to Madagascar set for several weeks in early 2023. Therefore, he gave me my own access to the software so I could run the board, continue the show in his absence. It was a challenge, as I had never run the board as well as interview the guest alone, particularly since I had my stroke. But things did go well. I did this for a few weeks. However, on week 3, I accidentally scheduled the show on my personal copy of the software and not his. Figuring this out only 5 minutes before the show was about to begin, because I logged in to his software and I didn't find the show, and then I figured out that I had my own copy of the software, logged into that one, and found the show there. I had to decide whether to redo the whole invite, hoping people were able to find it, or to pony up and get my version upgraded. I decided to do the latter. Bill returned, and I continued to run the board and get the guest, as well as create the thumbnails. What started out as a way for us to get the universe to know the reptile enthusiast Facebook group moderators had morphed into my personal show with Bill in attendance as he was able. The next change occurred after we noticed the theme for 2023 was people I met at the reptile shows I was attending with my wife and a few of our children. Fortunately, Reptile Show reporter name was not taken and seemed to be significantly more popular on Instagram based on the new people that liked and followed me. In just a few weeks, I got multiple times the number of people following the Reptile Show reporter as I got exotic pet adventures in several months, so we decided to make the change. On March 16th, 2023, we changed the name, and I purchased the URL. May 31st, 2023, the show was dedicated to a relaunch and full rebranding of the Reptile Show reporter. This included 2 new logos, one for general use, one to have for the people who have been on the show to display, this podcast launch, the website, including a blog written by me, and a trip down memory lane. I hope you've enjoyed this historical account, and it proves helpful to understand why we've had 2+ names and a few short breaks. We also hope this encourages all of those who are starting out with a new idea to understand that things grow, expand, and go through several changes before taking off usually. Often the overnight success has been around for many years, but it just happens to be a success overnight. Please join our Facebook group, Reptile Show Reporter, pictured here. Thanks.